started to change for Mom in 1984 when Granddaddy Lawrence had his first heart attack. Up until then, everything that mattered already seemed to be taken care of by somebody else, leaving her to do whatever her little heart desired, which has always involved living life in the fast lane. When she got the news about Grandpa, she didn't know it yet, but she was carrying twins. Granddaddy was at home and recovering well when he had a second heart attack. I was there, but I don't remember on account of the fact that Sid and I were only a month old when Granddaddy died. Grandma didn't pass for 5 more years, but most everything that I remember from those days happened when Sid and I were staying with Aunt Lil. When school let out in 95, we were 10 and Sid and I found ourselves living here, SYD Studio. We didn't know it then, but this would become the place we would always call home. It was the first time I remember my mother making breakfast for all of us and still being there when we went to bed. The summer soon faded, and Sid and I went back to school, where nothing really seemed to change at all, well other than the fact that the school was a whole lot further away. Sid and I used to ride our bikes or walk to school, but now we rode the bus. The bus went right past Aunt Lil's, but after a while I stopped looking. But for some reason, when we passed the red-haired girl's house, to the end of my school days, I'd find myself checking to see if that pink flamingo was still leaning on the front porch. I don't know the reason, but it was always there, as long as I went to school. When we'd finally arrive at home, we never knew what to expect, but it was one of two things: a busy studio or an empty house. Didn't matter though, because either way, Sid and I were just glad to get off that bus. There was a small room at the back of the studio that Sid and I shared for a little while, but when interest kindled, turned into all-out passion, I found myself more comfortable in the player's lounge. Since then, I've always found it difficult to get a good rest without a reclining chair. Doesn't matter though, never sleep too long anyway. Sid would isolate himself with his headphones on and his attention focused on his newfound love. Didn't seem to matter much to him if the studio was buzzing or we came home to an empty house. Meanwhile, time and time again, I watched confused people scratching their head at the patch bay till I knew my way around all the gear and became an asset to SYD Studio. Sid's love and devotion for a particular bass instrument paid off in spades in '99 when Sid and I provided our first dub tracks for a working band with a deadline. Short-lived though, Sid stuck around, but I hit the road a month before high school let out, and they never did send out that diploma. Doesn't matter though, nobody's ever asked me for one. After I left, things got more and more quiet. Seems the studio, mothballed by the previous owner several years earlier, was quickly losing its edge in a world that was going digital. Mom finally settled on a steady and reliable studio manager who convinced her to diversify her interests rather than compete in a saturated market, which was clearly her best advice, given the circumstances. No matter where I traveled or how busy things got, I never let a year pass without stopping in, usually around a holiday, but always when Mom had time. When I told Mom it was my turn to make breakfast the last time I arrived, I had no idea we were going to be locked under quarantine for a year and a half. Doesn't matter though, because no matter where I've been or where I might be going, there's no better place for me to be stuck making breakfast. SYD Studio is home.